It has a strategy. Its supporters call it the CNN strategy. I'm more direct. I call it the dead baby strategy. What Hamas does is they kill as many Israeli Jews as possible, knowing that Israel is going to have to respond by going after their commanders, their tunnels, and their rockets. And so they hide their commanders, their tunnels, and their rockets among babies and children and civilians. And then when Israel responds and tries to conduct a military operation to prevent recurrence of these barbarisms, they bring the dead babies in front of CNN and the New York Times. And the world, of course, sheds tears, as we all shed tears whenever we see a dead baby. And the world turns against Israel. And then Hamas does it again and again and again. It's been doing it for 20 years with great success because the media plays into it. So there is a great moral quandary. But, you know, if I were to rob a bank and hold you, Pierce, as a hostage, and then start shooting and the police in an attempt to stop me from shooting, or accidentally to shoot and kill you, under British law, under American law, under Sharia law, the responsible person is not the person whose bullet killed the hostage. It's the hostage taker who's guilty of murder.
Okay.
So, yes, there's a moral conundrum, but Hamas is responsible for causing it.
Okay. Omar Badr, I mean, there's no doubt that the scale of what Hamas did on October the 7th was so overwhelming and horrendous that Israel was always going to respond like this. Hamas knew that. And I guess my question off the top to you is, how did that serve the Palestinian people? How does what Hamas did and the scale that it did it, knowing what the response would be, knowing thousands of innocent Palestinians would die very quickly as a consequence, as well as people in Israel, how did that help the Palestinian people?
I think there's a bigger question here as far as context is concerned, which is that the single biggest terrorist organization in all of Palestine and Israel is known as the Israeli government. And the military wing of this terrorist organization, which is Orwellianly named the Defense Forces of Israel, has engaged in massive war crimes for decade after decade against Palestinians, engaging in the mass killing of Palestinian civilians, in land theft, in denial of water. I mean, just the list of atrocities goes on and on and on. And if we want to just go by a timeline, a question might be, why did the terrorist government of Israel think it can impose decade after decade of occupation and siege on Palestinians and deny them any prospect for a better future, and not think that there's going to be a reaction of sorts? So we have this a little bit backwards. We have this arbitrary starting point of an attack by Hamas, which, had it been confined to military targets, could have been construed as an act of legitimate resistance. But because it also included attacks, horrendous attacks on Israeli civilians, obviously these kinds of acts are indefensible. But ultimately, we are talking about a situation in which Israel is initiating violence, in which Israeli terrorism dwarfs anything that Hamas has ever done. And we're watching that even expand to a more monstrous scale. Now we're talking about an apartheid government that is engaging literally in the mass starvation of a civilian population and mass terrorism, killing them by the tens of thousands. And the question is, has it gone too far? I shudder to live in a world where that's even a question. Of course, these kinds of atrocities have to